Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. I mean, what if I told you that your absolute best ideas, your most creative, exciting professional goals are actually the exact things destroying your career?
That is a terrifying thought.
Mm.
But honestly, it is so true for modern professionals.
Right. We are so conditioned by modern business advice to believe that success is just a volume game. Squeeze in another meeting, open another browser tab, volunteer for that cross-functional committee.
Yeah, and then your cognitive bandwidth basically functions like a computer with 80 tabs open. You do not just run out of energy, you completely run out of working memory.
Exactly. Every secondary project you keep active is just this background application draining your mental RAM until, the system inevitably crashes when you try to execute the one task that actually matters. You generate an enormous amount of motion, but virtually zero measurable progress.
Well, it is a systemic failure of how we approach knowledge work today. We treat attention as an infinite resource when it is actually our most profound bottleneck.
Yeah, which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. This conversation is custom tailored for you, the modern professional, trying to cut through that noise and genuinely boost your business efficiency.
And to do that, we are unpacking a really comprehensive resource from smartkeys.org developed by founder Felix Römer. It is titled Two-List Prioritization, a simple method to focus on what matters.
Right, we are moving past those standard time management platitudes and getting into the physiological and strategic mechanisms of actual execution.
Because focus is no longer just a luxury. I mean, it is the defining factor between geometric career growth and perpetual busy work. Treating all tasks as equal, or even treating all good tasks as equal, quietly erodes your forward motion.
Absolutely. So to really grasp the mechanics of this, we need to look at a foundational story that grounds the methodology. We are talking about Warren Buffett and an exercise he ran with his personal pilot of 10 years, a man named Mike Flint.
Oh, I love this story. It perfectly illustrates the framework.
Yeah, so Buffett asked Flint to just conduct a massive brain dump, write down his top 25 career goals, like everything he wanted to achieve.
And the sheer volume of that initial list, it's intentional, right? You have to basically empty the cache of all your desires before you can even begin to analyze them.
Exactly. So once Flint had his 25 goals on paper, Buffett instructed him to review that list and circle his absolute top five, the five outcomes that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of his life.
Which sounds like pretty standard corporate goal setting so far. Identify your top 5 priorities.
Right, but the turning point, the part that flips traditional productivity completely on its head, is what Buffett told him to do with items 6 through 25. He told him to avoid them at all costs.
Yeah, they become an active avoid list, not a get to it later list. It is a strict quarantine zone.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because my initial reaction, and probably the reaction of anyone listening to this on their commute right now, is to heavily push back on that premise.
Oh, sure. It feels unnatural to ignore good ideas.
Why in the world would you actively quarantine items 6 through 25? I mean, these aren't bad ideas. By definition, they survive the filter to make your top 25 list.
Yeah, they are inherently good ideas.
Right. They are real opportunities, maybe a side hustle or a new certification. I kind of look at goals 6 through 25 like productivity junk food.
Oh, that is an incredibly apt way to frame it. I really like that analogy.
Yeah, think about the mechanics of junk food. It is highly tempting, it is easy to consume, and it gives you a rapid spike of dopamine when you start eating it. Starting a new low-stakes project feels great.
But it completely ruins your appetite for the main course.
Exactly. You spend your day snacking on these secondary goals, and by the time you face the massive, complex work of your top five, you are entirely undernourished. You have eaten, but you haven't fueled your growth.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of decision fatigue. That really helps us understand why those secondary items are so uniquely dangerous.
Right, because they are so justifiable.
Exactly. If an idea is terrible, your brain effortlessly discards it. But because items 6 through 25 are legitimate opportunities, they constantly demand negotiation.
Oh, man. That morning negotiation is brutal.
It really is. If you keep a list of 25 active goals, every single morning your prefrontal cortex has to run this complex sorting algorithm. Should I push on goal 3 today? Or maybe goal 12? Well, goal 12 is easier.
And you burn a significant percentage of your daily cognitive fuel just arbitrating between good options. It is worse than that, actually. You aren't just wasting energy deciding, you are experiencing the ambient guilt of not advancing the other 24 items.
Right. You are spreading finite resources across too much surface area. It just results in a graveyard of half-started projects. Explicitly naming an avoid list neutralizes that psychological drain.
Because you are building a protective perimeter around your top five, you eliminate the morning negotiation entirely. You have made the decision in advance, which preserves your cognitive RAM for the deep, complex execution of List A.
Exactly. But, philosophy doesn't survive Monday morning without a solid system.
No, it definitely doesn't. So how does a professional integrate this into the absolute chaos of a normal corporate schedule? The SmartKeys article lays out a remarkably straightforward, practical application.
Starting with that brain dump, the mechanics of it are crucial. You set a timer for 20 to 40 minutes and just write without a filter.
Right, you have to bypass your inner critic to capture big ambitions, incremental wins, and nagging projects. All of it.
And you can apply this macroscopically to your lifetime goals, or shrink the timeline to a single fiscal quarter, or even just this week.
Shrinking the timeline is where this becomes a daily weapon. Once you have your unedited list, you force the painful constraint. You circle exactly 5.
Not 6, not 5, plus a quick stretch goal, just 5.
Just 5. These are the outcomes that drive unquestionable value. You extract those onto a new page, and that is List A. The remaining items become List B, the avoid at all costs boundary.
Which is incredibly hard to enforce in practice.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting. You craft this pristine List A on Sunday night. Monday morning hits, you open your laptop, and you're immediately ambushed.
Ambushed by what the methodology calls calendar creep.
Yes. Your schedule gets hijacked by things that definitively belong on List B. So how do we defend the perimeter?
Well, calendar creep preys on our desire to be helpful and responsive, right?
Yeah.
It is basically the anatomy of a disguised interruption.
Oh, totally. Like the classic quick 15-minute sync to pick your brain.
Exactly, which always morphs into an hour of unscripted consulting. To defend List A, you have to implement explicit tactical blockers. You anticipate the reactive work by quarantining it.
Meaning you block short, highly specific slots in your calendar specifically for handling ad hoc requests.
Yes, ensuring they do not bleed into the hours reserved for deep work.
But a blocked calendar only works if you actually enforce it. The article introduces the concept of making standing decisions. And I have to push back here because a standing decision sounds incredibly rigid.
Oh, why is that?
Well, if my manager comes to me on a Tuesday with a hair on fire problem, I can't just cross my arms and say, sorry, I made a standing decision on Sunday. This isn't on my List A. Doesn't this framework make you inflexible to actual business emergencies?
You are confusing an operational baseline with strategic rigidity. A true business-critical emergency obviously supersedes the list.
But most things aren't true emergencies, are they?
Exactly. The vast majority of what we label emergencies in a corporate environment are actually just manufactured urgency. A standing decision simply means the default answer is no.
Unless the new request passes a rigorous stress test.
Yes. If a request comes in, you filter it through a single question. Does this directly accelerate a List A objective? If it does not, it requires executive override to get on your calendar.
That makes a lot of sense.
The SmartKeys article anchors this with a brutal but necessary truth. The difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything.
Man, say no to almost everything. That requires a massive rewiring for ambitious professionals who built their early careers by saying yes to every opportunity.
It absolutely does. But it is the only way to manage your energy capacity.
Which brings us to execution. A shielded calendar is useless if you are just staring blankly at your screen. Let's make this tangible for you with the specific templates provided in the resource.
Yeah, those templates are incredibly practical for visualizing this.
Take your immediate work environment. Your List A might be to finalize the Q4 software launch. Your List B, the avoid list, might be joining the exploratory committee for a 2028 feature.
And that exploratory committee is the ultimate List B trap. I mean, it feels highly productive.
Oh, definitely. You are collaborating, you are looking at whiteboards, you feel important.
But it actively steals processing power from the Q4 launch that actually pays your salary.
Right. Or look at your broader career progression. List A could be building a portfolio of 3 deep, data-driven case studies to secure a promotion. List B might be delivering free lunch and learn talks for other departments.
The talks stroke your ego, but they don't provide the measurable leverage you need for your immediate career transition.
Exactly. Even in your personal life, List A is establishing a healthy evening routine to regulate my sleep. List B is starting to learn a third language.
This requires brutal honesty about the opportunity cost of your time.
Oh, 100%. So, assuming we have successfully defined our lists, How do we maintain this execution without burning out? If I am only focusing on these massive top 5 goals, how do I handle the necessary, unavoidable administrative drag of my job?
You master the weekly cadence through physiological optimization, not just basic time blocking.
Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice?
You must reserve at least 2 substantial blocks a week strictly for deep work on list day, treating them as unmovable medical appointments where you default to absolute do not disturb.
And for the administrative drag, the emails, the expense reports, the Slack updates,
You batch them into highly compressed, specific windows.
because checking email every 10 minutes isn't just a time loss, it is a massive neurochemical drain.
It is a devastating context-switching tax. Research consistently shows it takes upwards of 23 minutes to regain deep cognitive focus after a single interruption.
Wow, so if you check your inbox every half hour, you are perpetually operating in a state of superficial attention.
Exactly. But beyond batching, the framework insists on matching your cognitive load to your circadian rhythms. You schedule the demanding, high-stakes List A tasks during your peak physiological energy windows.
Right, so if my brain fires best at 8 a.m., I shouldn't waste that premium biological real estate clearing out my inbox.
Precisely. You aggressively reserve your low-energy periods, that inevitable 3:00 p.m. slump, for the low-friction administrative chores.
You are matching the RPM of the engine to the steepness of the hill. You don't redline your brain formatting a spreadsheet.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Okay, protecting my personal calendar and optimizing my own circadian rhythms is powerful. But we don't work in vacuums, so what does this all mean when we scale it? Won't utilizing this framework get you in trouble in a larger organization if your priorities don't match your manager's?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, scaling this to a team level actually eliminates internal friction by creating a mechanism for radical alignment.
Because in most corporate structures, every single employee has a slightly different implicit idea of what the department's top priorities are.
Exactly. And everyone is nurturing their own private graveyard of secondary projects. It is a total recipe for chaos.
It is why every cross-functional meeting feels like a political battle over resources. Engineering wants to stabilize the platform, sales wants a custom integration, marketing wants a new dashboard.
Now imagine that same cross-functional team sitting down and establishing a collective list A. They agree on the 5 objectives that will define the success of the entire department for the quarter.
And just as crucially, they agree on a collective list B, the initiatives they're explicitly ignoring.
Yes. The methodology depersonalizes workplace conflict. When the VP of sales demands the custom integration, engineering doesn't have to defensively say, no, we won't do it.
They say, our collective list A is the platform migration. Does this new integration mathematically supersede the migration?
Right. And if so, which of the top 5 are we demoting to list B? It turns an emotional turf war into an objective equation.
It forces absolute clarity on trade-offs. You can no longer hide behind the defense of simply being busy. If it isn't moving one of the top 5 forward, it is noise.
It creates a profound cultural shift. Teams stop measuring their worth by how many hours they log or how many Slack channels they dominate, and they start measuring progress by finished, delivered value.
It completely changes the tone of a Monday morning stand-up. You are no longer listing off 40 trivial things you touched to prove you were working. You are simply reporting on the movement of the big 5.
The transparency there ensures real accountability.
So, bringing this powerful strategic framework back down to the individual listener, what are the immediate next steps after this deep dive ends? Because this isn't a one-off exercise.
No, it is an iterative cycle. But before you can repeat the cycle, you have to establish rigorous done criteria for your top 5. What does completion actually look like?
Right. Without defining the finish line, you will fall into the trap of endless polishing, which is just procrastination wearing a suit.
You really have to know when to stop.
And once you cross that clearly defined finish line for your list A,
You acknowledge the completion. You celebrate the fact that you actually finished something meaningful. Then you open the vault.
you revisit your list B.
Exactly. You evaluate your current landscape, pull the next 5 highest leverage items from the quarantine zone, and elevate them to your new list A. The cycle begins again.
That makes so much sense.
The SmartKeys methodology operates on a central tenet. Elimination is the engine of execution.
Elimination is the engine of execution. We are so deeply conditioned to think of execution as adding more effort, adding more hours, adding more hustle.
But this framework proves that true execution is about the ruthless subtraction of distractions.
Absolutely. And that brings me to a final, somewhat provocative thought I want to leave you with today. We have thoroughly explored how this two-list method drives undeniable, quantifiable results.
Real, measurable progress.
Yes, but what if your current company culture is broken? What if your organization actively rewards busyness over actual completion?
Oh, where looking stressed, working weekends, and responding to emails at midnight is the unwritten requirement for a promotion. That's
Yeah.
the reality for many professionals.
Exactly. It raises a critical question about managing upwards and the optics of productivity.
Hmm.
How can you quietly implement this framework to protect your own cognitive bandwidth?
And still survive in that environment.
Right. Can you deliver such undeniable high-quality results on the things that actually move the needle that you force the culture around you to adapt to your newfound productivity?
That is a fascinating challenge to navigate.
Can you become so effective that you render their chaotic culture obsolete? It is definitely something to mull over as you audit your calendar this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast. We really appreciate you giving us your time and attention to explore these critical concepts.
We hope this deep dive equips you to cut through the noise, defend your cognitive RAM, and find genuine, needle-moving focus.
If you found this breakdown valuable, please hit subscribe to the podcast so you never miss our future deep dives into the tools, mindsets, and strategies shaping the future of work.
And as always, we highly encourage you to read Felix Römer's full article. It contains all the specific templates, the deeper psychology, and the further details we analyzed today.
Yes, you can find the direct link to the smartkeys.org resource right there in the show notes. Until next time, protect your focus and keep moving forward.